I actually talked to Joe Biden about this. When he was on the show, I told him I hoped he pardoned Hunter.
I remember.
I take issue with lying about it. I wanted to ask him here when he came on The View, but the thought was he said so many times he wasn't going to pardon him. That to me is lying to the public.
I'd stop calling it a lie. This is very different than any other situation that we have ever dealt with. Because when we're talking about who gets a pardon and who doesn't get a pardon, this man, I think Biden had no intentions of pardoning Hunter.
Except he did, in fact, pardon his son, Hunter Biden, after saying that he wouldn't repeatedly. Now, he announced this over the weekend with a statement. I'm going to read the relevant excerpts from it. Biden says, from the day I took office, I said I would not interfere with the Justice Department's decision making, and I kept my word, even as I have watched my son being selectively and unfairly prosecuted. Without aggravating factors like use in a crime, multiple purchases, or buying a weapon as a straw purchaser, people are almost never brought to trial on felony charges solely for how they filled out a gun form. So what he's referencing there is Hunter Biden's charge in lying in a government document in order to obtain or buy a firearm. What he lied about was his drug use. He bought the gun at a time when he was addicted to drugs. Biden continues saying, those who were late paying their taxes because of serious addictions, but paid them back subsequently with interest and penalties, are typically given non-criminal resolutions. It is clear that Hunter was treated differently. Finally, he says, no reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion than Hunter was singled out only because he is my son, and that is wrong. And he ends his statement, Cenk, by saying, look, I hope the American people understand where I'm coming from and why I'm doing this. So, he wants them to see this as like the unfair prosecution of his son. He sees it as lawfare. And that's how he's trying to kind of soften the blow, considering for many, many months, for a few years, this is what we were hearing from the Biden administration. Watch.
Is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No.
And have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
Yes. It's still a no. It will be a no. It is a no. And I don't have anything else to add. Will he pardon his son? No.
Does the president have any intention of pardoning him?
We've been asked that question multiple times. Our answer stands, which is no.
Now, look, Karine Jean-Pierre's White House press secretary, she's regurgitating what she's told to say. And Biden said on record multiple times that he does not intend to pardon his son. I think that the hypocrisy angle here is actually the least interesting angle to the story. Yeah, politicians lie. Yeah, but even Democratic presidents lie. I'm not surprised by that at all. And in fact, Cenk, when it comes to these two particular charges, right, the gun charge and the failure to pay his taxes, well, Biden is right. His son did end up paying his taxes back with the penalties, with interest included. And he did lie on that government form, but the fact that he's facing 25 years in prison over that is ridiculous. So I personally do not mind the pardon over those offenses. However, I do have a problem with the window of time in which Biden has given his son a blanket pardon. And I'm going to get to that in just a minute, but I want to get your thoughts first.
Yeah, well, first of all, let's acknowledge how powerful we are. I brought on a free Hunter t-shirt from shoptyt.com onto Hassan's Thanksgiving special. And boom, he's free. Look, I'm not saying we did it, but I'm just saying, okay? No, seriously, the reason why we have that t-shirt is kind of playful for the reasons that I'm gonna explain now. So first on The View, Whoopi's excuses for Biden were hilarious. Well, you can't call that a lie.
It's a lie.
He wasn't going to pardon his son, and then he did. Wait, why can't you call that a lie? It's a bald-faced lie. It's as lie gets, right? And the reason she's saying that you can't call that a lie is because Joe Biden's her friend. So she just wants to have a completely different standard. And then she said, well, I didn't think he had intent to lie. When you say you're not going to do something, thinking, it doesn't matter, we'll probably win the election anyway. Oh my God, we lost the election. I didn't see that coming. Well, I was lying the entire time. That's intent. That's intent. But for mainstream media, corporate Democrats are the beloved. They could do no wrong. So it doesn't matter if they do the same exact thing as Donald Trump, which we'll get back to in a second. Donald Trump bad, Joe Biden's an angel. No, neither one of them is an angel. So now on Hunter Biden, as we've said hundreds of times on this show, low-level con man. Everybody knows that. He's not a Ukrainian gas expert. He's not a modern artist. That's all scams using his name to get paid, okay? So second thing is the laptop showed that he's not connected to Joe Biden. Every piece of evidence shows, and my God, did Comer and the Republicans try. They got his bank accounts, they got every piece of evidence that they needed, and still nothing connecting him to Joe Biden. In fact, in the laptop, he says, don't ever say that we can represent the big guy, because we can't. And he won't do what we say. And it turns out, as far as we can tell, Joe Biden never did anything to help Hunter Biden. Now, when the Republicans say, well, he must have. But brother, you got to have evidence. We'll come back to that in the scope of how big the pardon is. So would I have pardoned these things? Well, look, as another thing we pointed out on the show 100 times, and Anna just made it 101, I'll make it 102. These charges were garbage. They were trash. That gun charge would imprison half the country.
Yeah, for real.
Right wing, you do not want that gun charge to be a precedent, okay? Because if you ever smoke pot and then you write in the form that whatever, that you haven't done drugs, that's it. You're as guilty as Hunter Biden. Give him 25 years. I mean, that's how they can clean up all the guns in the country. They just arrest like 3/4 of right wingers for lying on that form. It's almost impossible not to lie on that form. So now, the income tax thing, also total trash. Look, I love that the IRS hired more auditors and want to audit the rich. They're getting away with, cheating on their taxes ad nauseum to the tune of billions of dollars. But this guy didn't file his taxes because he was high. Then before he was charged, he was like, oh, okay, I'll make amends. He filed his taxes, paid the taxes, and paid the penalty. We're done with it. What are we're going to go after him and not go after the billionaires that are not paying their taxes? No, those are all political. And you don't solve Biden administration going after Trump politically by the Trump administration going after Hunter Biden politically. And that's what Biden was worried about. And that's why he that's why he pardoned him. If you say, wait a minute, it's Joe Biden administration that went after Hunter. Well, that's what we're going to talk about next. Okay, yes. Why did they do that? And was it for optics, or was there something bad in there that they wanted to avoid? So Anna, back to you.
So I just want to reiterate, even though Biden did lie, I actually do not have an issue with the pardon as it pertains specifically to his two current charges, right? The tax charge and the gun charge. Putting that aside, though, when you notice the period of time in which Biden has provided the blanket pardon for his son, the dates are super fishy. I noticed that it's like this lengthy 11-year period. So like, what justifies that? And more importantly, when did he commit the crimes that he's being prosecuted for? So I looked into this, and luckily Lee Fong did some excellent reporting on this issue. He writes that the order grants Hunter a pardon for those offenses against the United States which he has committed or may have committed or taken part in during the period from January 1st, 2014 through December 1st, 2024. So that's 10 years, a 10-year span. So he writes that the pardon window extends beyond the period of the crimes prosecuted by the Department of Justice. Okay, because after all, the illegal firearm purchase was on October 12th of 2018. Hunter failed to pay his 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019 taxes on time. So what justifies going all the way back to January 1st of 2014? Well, 2014 is when he was tapped to serve on the board of the Ukrainian gas company Burisma. And while Joe Biden has not been found guilty, there's no evidence to indicate that Joe Biden engaged in any influence peddling. Recent reporting from the New York Times indicates that Hunter Biden was certainly trying to engage in influence peddling. Now, there hasn't been any prosecution on those grounds, and I think that the congressional Republicans were so intent on catching Joe Biden in some sort of criminality that they kind of didn't pursue prosecution of Biden on these alleged corruption charges or corruption allegations. But nonetheless, I think that window is far too long. And to me, it signals that there's a possibility that Hunter Biden did something illegal, and Joe Biden is offering this blanket pardon for a lengthier period of time in order to protect his son. I could be wrong about that. But what do you think, Cenk?
Yeah, so look, there's two different things here, as Anna's pointing out. One is, what did Hunter Biden do wrong? And the other is he connected to Joe Biden? And so far, in every piece of evidence we've seen, including the infamous laptop, it appears that Joe Biden is not connected to Hunter Biden. Like, so he goes and works with some Romanian criminal, Hunter does, some Chinese company that wanted something and they couldn't get it and then went bankrupt, et cetera. Not just the Ukrainian gas guys, but there's all sorts of different scams he's involved in, right? So the thing is, though, you see in every instance, they do not get what they wanted from the US government. So that is enormously exculpatory of Joe Biden. That means Joe Biden likely didn't do anything wrong, and there's never been a shred of evidence that he did. On the other hand, did Hunter do something worse than the gun and tax charges? That's entirely possible, right? To me, I never, to this day, I don't know if Biden's Justice Department brought up the gun and income tax charges just to charge him with something, just to say, hey, look, we're being fair and honest. We're charging the president's son, so get off our backs. But that was a way of avoiding the corruption issue, which is much larger and worse, right? Or they really didn't have anything on the corruption issue, but the Republicans were breathing down their necks so badly that they're like, all right, let's just charge him on the gun charge because technically it's illegal, and the income tax thing because technically it's illegal, and that way we can get a win and get the Republicans off our back because they're investigating us every single day. And I don't know how many times they're telling me there is no corruption that connects to Joe Biden. So it could be either one of those things.
Yeah, in fact, I remember when there was a plea deal for Hunter Biden that the Republican Party succeeded in torpedoing, because the issue they had with the plea deal is that it would prevent the Republicans from investigating possible influence peddling or corruption that Hunter Biden may have engaged in. And they thought that was unfair. You know, a plea deal pertaining specifically to the charges he's currently dealing with, they seem to be open to, but they didn't like the added contingency that Republicans or prosecutors would not be able to go after Hunter Biden over potential corruption. And the New York Times reporting that I'm referring to, I'll give you a few examples. So in 2015, Hunter Biden was hired by this Gabriel Popoviciu, who is a Romanian businessman. He was facing prosecution for corruption in Romania. And in 2015, he hired Hunter Biden, who is a lawyer, while his father was vice president, to help fend off charges. That effort was unsuccessful, to your point, Cenk. And in 2016, this Russian businessman was convicted on charges related to a land deal in northern Bucharest. So there are other specific examples that have been provided by the New York Times in their reporting, having to do with China, as you referenced, Cenk. I don't know what the truth is, right? This is not really something that has been investigated by prosecutors. But again, I do think that the length of time in which Hunter Biden has now been given cover is too long, and I think could potentially be done on purpose to protect Hunter Biden, if he engaged in any illegal corruption, which does happen time to time, believe it or not. Some corruption is still considered illegal in America.
Yeah, I know, because especially the Corrupt Foreign Service Act prevents you from bribing foreign officials, as an example, or them bribing you, because one of Trump's top donors, Sheldon Adelson, had that charge against him, which magically went away with a tiny little fine in that context when Trump got into office. So, but I'm sure the Republicans are livid about that. Are they? No. Oh, yeah. I'm getting news from my non-existent earpiece that they are not livid about that, and I'll come back to that in a second. But so prosecutors, I don't know if they did the right thing or not in unearthing everything they could about Hunter Biden, but I do know that James Comer had all the time in the world to investigate him. And here's how many connections that he found between Joe Biden and Hunter Biden: zero.
Exactly.
Nothing. Okay. So if you're pretending that he found something, well, where is it, brother? Where is it? So he's full of crap. He never found anything. One of our members here, Box on Super Chat, made a good point. So on the gun charge, he said, so I'm pretty pro Second Amendment. I don't like that he pardoned Hunter without fixing the question of the gun form too. That question needs to be changed.
I agree.
This has nothing to do with any substance. If you thought that was bad, you should change that line in the gun form. And I agree. I'm not a gun rights advocate. I'm probably the opposite. But that line makes no sense and it should be taken out. But nobody fixes anything that affects the average American. They only do things that affect the very, very elite. Now, finally, to that point, I'm allowed to be outraged by Hunter Biden's scams. I'm allowed to know, hey, wait a minute, did it connect to Joe Biden or not, et cetera. But that's because I'm consistent and principled, whether it's Republicans or Democrats. But if you're a Republican or a right winger who's saying Hunter Biden is the worst thing in the world, blah, 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 but then you don't mind that Donald Trump pardoned Roger Stone, Steve Bannon, and Charles Kushner, let alone dozens of other incredibly wealthy people and people connected to Donald Trump that I could tell you about, well, then you're a giant hypocrite. So you got to own up to that. So, for example, Steve Bannon's crimes had nothing to do with the Trump administration. He was building a fake wall. He just robbed his own viewers, and his co-conspirators went to jail. And Trump's like, yeah, but he's my guy, and I like that he was robbing people. I pardon him. But if you say, okay, well, but Bannon and Stone, maybe they're crooks, but they're his crooks. Charles Kushner is obviously his son-in-law's dad, Jared Kushner's dad. That crime that Charles Kushner committed was both awful, was a white-collar crime looking to rip other people off, and happened before the Trump administration. It had nothing to do with lawfare, and the guy who convicted him was Chris Christie. So why did you pardon Charles Kushner? Because he's part of the Trump family. So I could be mad and you could be mad about Hunter Biden, but Trump and his allies don't get this fake cry about, oh, I can't believe Biden pardoned family members. All right, why'd you pardon Charles Kushner, that giant criminal? Oh, right, because he's now part of your criminal family.
Yeah, and in fact, Donald Trump has named him the ambassador of France, which is what? Yeah, wait, Jared Kushner is going to be the ambassador of France?
That's what I thought.
Oh, I thought it was going to be his dad. Maybe I'm mistaken. Is it his father or is it Jared Kushner?
It's his father?
Yeah, it's his father.
Criminal ambassador to France?
Yes. Yes.
Oh God.
Yes. It's wrong.
Christ.
And look, this is the kind of stuff that erodes trust among the American people in our various institutions, including our justice system. There's very clearly a two-tier justice system at play here. And so look, I think that there should be a law preventing presidents from pardoning individuals where they have a conflict of interest, family members, right? There should be protections to prevent that kind of activity from taking place. But if there isn't, we're going to continue seeing more of this, and we're going to continue seeing more trust eroded among the American people toward our institutions and our justice system. It's just the fact of the matter. And it is unjust. It is unjust, that Jared Kushner's father engaged in white-collar crime prior to Trump taking office, was in prison, was pardoned by Trump, and is now going to serve as the US ambassador to France. That's insane. Yeah. But that's what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, sorry, I read that headline in a hurry. You guys are right. It's his dad, of course. And so why is Charles the criminal Kushner our ambassador to France? If you guys don't know the story, part of what he did was that he wanted to screw over his brother-in-law. So he hired a prostitute to have sex with him and tape it. And then he sent that tape to his own sister to use as blackmail. He's a sick, sick guy. And now he's our ambassador to France because when you're sick and corrupt and a white-collar criminal, Trump gives you a reward for it. Keep it real. And then if you're MAGA guys, hey, what are you doing? So Hunter Biden getting $5 million from a Ukrainian gas company that he has no expertise in and is totally full of crap about. We agree with you guys. That's a scam. That's a con. That's the Ukrainian government trying to, or the Ukrainian company trying to influence US foreign policy. They failed, but they tried to. But Jared Kushner was in charge of policy in regards to Saudi Arabia in the first term. And then after helping Saudi Arabia with US foreign policy, hey, look at that. Jared Kushner got $2 billion. Now that's not a low-level scam. That's a high-level con man. $2 billion from the Saudis. You guys enraged about that? Are we gonna have hearings about that? In fact, James Comer was asked about it because he did mention it once. And I remember giving him credit. Oh my God, he mentioned Jared Kushner in the same sentence, right? The very next day when he's asked about it, or a little bit later after he's asked, Comer said, oh no, I mentioned that, but we will not be investigating Jared Kushner. Of course not, because he's not fair. He doesn't care about doing what's right. He's just a political hatchet man. So his job was to destroy the Biden family and protect the Kushner and Trump family. Well, congratulations, mission accomplished.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.